Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the CURT Trailer Hitch receiver on a 2023 Tesla Model Y. Many times people ask, why would you put a hitch on a Tesla? Well, at the end of the day, it's still a car and you're still going to be using it for multiple things, whether it be a bike rack, cargo carrier, and yes, even a ball mount for towing a trailer. These are very capable and still able to tow. Even though they're an electric vehicle, people get a misconception. And the great part about the hitches for these is they're going to replace the bumper beam and be a nice clean look overall. In fact, this panel can go back in place when not in use, and you're not even going to know that the hitch is there. Whenever you're ready to use it, you can just simply pop this out and you'll be ready to load up into your receiver. This is a 2" by 2" receiver, which is going to be the standard size for most accessories that you'd be picking up. It's definitely the most common, and all of the accessories that you'd be loading up into this are going to require a 5/8 pin and clip. This is not included with the hitch. A lot of times when you get accessories, they'll have them included, but if you plan on leaving cargo carrier, bike rack, or ball mount on your Tesla long term, you might want to look at a locking pin and clip. That's going to be a good deterrent for anyone walking by, and that way they can't just take the stuff with them. I love the hidden clean look and the availability to put that panel back in place, but there is some caveats with that. If you do plan on towing a trailer, the safety chain loops are fairly far up here. I can still get a standard S-hook in place. It's a little trickier than most just because of the clearance, but it is able to go on there, and a larger clevis style is probably able to go on there as well. If you are planning on towing regularly and you want to make this a little bit easier, you could put some quick links on there, but you still have that availability to hook those on. Now, if you're towing or just using this for accessories, you want to adhere to the weight capacities on the hitch, but you also want to check the vehicle's owner's manual to see what it's capable of towing, and then compare that with the hitch numbers as well as the ball mount and ball and anything that you're going to be towing with. Take the lowest number so you stay safe. And this has pretty good capacities with a gross trailer weight rating of 3,500 pounds, and that's going to be the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded onto it. The tongue weight rating is 525 pounds, and that's the downward pressure that's put on the inside of the receiver tube opening. And that's going to account for a lot of your suspended accessories, whether it be a cargo carrier or bike rack, and that's a pretty solid rating. With 525 pounds, you could probably get a 4x bike rack loaded up with no issues, and the same thing goes for a cargo carrier. Now, this can't be used with weight distribution, so you are going to be limited to those numbers. The recessed nature of the receiver tube opening means that you are going to want to pay attention to some of the accessories that you may purchase, because a lot of bike racks and cargo carriers can stow in a vertical position, but with this being recessed, you might want to look at one with a longer shank than most. Measuring from the center of our hitch pin hole to the furthest point, it's coming in at about 5 inches. So just keep in mind, if those accessories can fold up, you're probably not going to be able to open up that rear hatch without lowering it down, but that's not too hard to do. And if you're looking at how they're going to interact with your Tesla, you can take a look at our test fits on products to see how it interacts with it, and that way you can tell your clearances. Now, if you're getting a ball mount, you're going to want to make sure that you have the proper rise or drop. So measuring from the top of the receiver tube opening to the ground, we're coming in at a pretty healthy 14.5 inches. So to determine that rise or drop necessary, if you have your trailer available, get it as level as possible, measure from the ground to the top of the coupler, and then you can take that number, compare it with our measurements, and then you'll be able to figure out the rise or drop necessary to get the trailer nice and level, giving you the best towing experience. Now, when it comes to the installation of your hitch, this one is not exactly an easy one, and mostly that's because you're pulling off the rear fascia to remove the factory bumper beam, and that's where the hitch is going to mount up. And I will admit, taking off a rear fascia is not a very common thing to do. In fact, I've worked on cars my whole life and never had to take off a rear fascia until I worked here. Don't let that scare you off. This isn't that hard of a vehicle to get the fascia removed. It's just a lot more work than you might anticipate. But I'll be walking you through step by step to make sure that you get it installed. Now, if this is something you watch the installation video and you go, I don't have the place to do it, the time, the want, the tools, whatever it may be, adding a hitch is still totally worth it on your vehicle, and I highly recommend getting one. But if the installation's holding you back, you can reach out to our dealer locator to find someone close to you to get your hitch installed, and that way you can still enjoy the benefits of a hitch. Once you get it installed, whether you do it yourself or have someone do it, let us know how you're using it. Take some pictures. We love to see you out on adventures using our products out in the wild. It gives other Tesla owners an idea of what they can do with their vehicle. Now, as far as the installation goes, follow along. I'll walk you through step by step. Make sure you get your hitch installed.
With those safety steps out of the way, we can begin removing this underbody panel from underneath of the rear bumper. It's going to be held in place with 10mm bolts or screws and a few plastic pushpin fasteners. It'll be helpful to have a pushpin removal tool. However, a small flathead screwdriver will also do the trick for taking these out. Depending on the age of the vehicle at the time of installation, road grime, dirt, and debris can gunk up inside of these and make them a little bit stiffer, harder to take out. However, prying down from the center section will allow you to push down underneath the base and remove the fasteners. One thing I highly suggest is, as you remove these fasteners from the vehicle, having a safe and secure place to put them for when it comes time to reinstall. With those push pins out of the way, we'll come back around with a 10mm socket. And remove all the bolts. With all of the 10mm screws and push pins removed from everywhere underneath the vehicle on this underbody panel, we'll have to turn our attention to the wheel well because there's 4 more push pin fasteners holding this panel up. There's 1, 2, and 3, and tucked away just behind the rear tire, right there is number 4. Now, working at these in the wheel well is where the flathead screwdriver might actually be the better tool for this one, just due to the confined space. And again, just working underneath of the center section. Once you have it popped up, pry out the back, and continue that for the other 3. And just be patient when you're working with these. Don't want to tear them up or nothing. So if one side of it's a little too gunked up, try working at the other side, and they should all pop out. There we go. With all 4 removed, we'll go over to the other wheel well and repeat the same process. Now we can remove this underbody panel. These do get a little jumpy. Sometimes it's just, you pull out a couple of these little tabs and then the whole thing wants to go. So just be careful as you're doing this, especially if you're directly underneath of it. You don't want to get a face full of whatever has been hiding up underneath your underbody panel before you pull it down. But we'll slide it out from over this midsection one. Get that worked down, and then we can shove it backward. All right, and that's what I meant right there. You can see all these little plastic tabs along it that interlock and slide up into this one above it at the bottom of our bumper. Just be real careful, and we'll set this off to the side. The next step of this process is going to be peeling back this plastic wheel well liner up to about here, and that'll give us enough room to take out an 8mm screw from behind here that holds the rear fascia to the quarter panel. Then we're also going to be removing this little hand nut off of this stud inside the fender liner. Now, one thing that I found helpful when doing the other side before this was undoing this hand nut first, allowing you to pull the fender liner back just to get a little bit more room to fit a hand behind the plastic trim and allow for easier pulling. There's a small tab hanging off the bottom of this wheel well liner that hooks behind here, which makes it a little difficult to get your first section pried up and out, but there's a small plastic push pin behind here and that tab you're working against, and this is really the hardest part. Once you get that tab undone and the push pin fastener out, the rest of it just kind of starts pulling out a little easier. One tool that's helpful to have is going to be a plastic trim panel tool. That way, as you kind of hook your fingers back there, you can leverage up. The goal is going to be to create enough room right here to get your plastic trim tool slid back in there and start getting some pressure behind that fastener, causing it to come up and out. Almost there. You can see this tab on the bottom is really letting us know. All right, with that removed, we can start pulling this back. You want to be careful. Always pull as close to the fasteners as you can so as not to cause any kind of stress, because this plastic fender liner stuff, if it creases, it'll show a white mark, and chances are you don't want that. So we'll come back with a small crumpled up paper towel, stick it up in here, and allow us to have enough room to work at this 8mm screw without scuffing up or having any clips come back and touch the paint. When I grabbed the 8mm socket for this screw, I also came back and put some painter's tape along this just to protect the fascia as we go to take it off later. But with the 8mm screw exposed, we can remove it. And now we can go repeat the same process to prepare the other side of the fender. And now we can repeat the same process to go prepare the other side of the fascia. Our next step of this process is going to be removing our taillights, and to do that, we have to get inside of the trunk.
Now, if you disconnected the battery, you aren't going to have the availability to open up the rear hatch. And if you're having issues getting your Tesla to wake back up, the best way that I've found through that process is to put a jump pack or a jump. There's a positive terminal that you can attach to in the center of the frunk, and that's going to allow you to get the power back up to open this. So it is going to be important because we're going to need to remove some of the interior panels, and the first one being the threshold. This is pretty easy. It's just a series of clips. If you reach under the bottom or use a plastic trim tool to pry this up, you should be able to work both corners and then work your way towards the middle, and it'll pop out. It may be caught on the weather stripping, so peeling this out might help it along to get this taken out. Now we can set this aside. To get our taillights removed, it's going to be a little bit a multi-step process here. We're going to begin by popping out this plastic push pin. And this whole section will be a little bit more helpful if you pop out this area just enough, because we're going to peel this back in order to gain access to the hardware and the plug that the taillight has in place. So we're just going to peel back on our weather stripping. And what we're looking for is the taillight plug is right here. There's a locking tab on it. If you pull that back and then push down, we should be able to get our wiring harness undone. And it may fight you a little bit, but if you pull the red tab back and use that to press, that's going to unlock it. And then from here, what we need to do, this top cap, this separates. So if you can wedge either a plastic trim tool or even sometimes just by hand, you can kind of walk it back and forth and get a gap. From here, you can just pry this up. And these are side specific, so you might want to, if you're keeping all your hardware organized, just make sure you have this on the proper one. And then from here, as I peel this back, you're going to find that there's going to be nuts on studs. There's 2 of them, and it's going to be an 8mm socket to get those removed. So we'll get those taken out. Now be careful, they're really small, and normally they're not terribly tight. So if you just knock them loose, I would recommend using your fingers to get the rest of it off. Once we get our last one taken off, what you can do to help get the taillight popped out is where those studs were, or are where those nuts. If you just push on those, that's going to help draw the taillight out. And there's going to be 2 alignment tabs that are located kind of right in this area. And to get these popped out can be a little nerve-wracking. You don't want to, crack your taillight or anything in the process. So it's going to take a little bit of force. On this side, it's a little easier because you have your charge port, so I can get my fingers here. The other side is the taillight that's flush with it. So if you need to, a plastic trim tool, you can kind of just wedge that in there, give pressure, and then just pull this back until you get those tabs to unlock. And then from here, we can raise that out, and you can see these are just those alignment tabs. If they're really giving you a lot of trouble, don't force pressure on the plastic. You can run the risk of cracking these pretty easily. What I found is if you take some soapy water, spray it down in there, and really just kind of shake the light, that'll help loosen it up. making it a little bit easier to remove. Tail light removed, that's going to give us access to a 10mm bolt on each side that attaches the fascia. So we're going to get those removed. Now to get our fascia removed, you're going to want to start on each corner, peeling back, and really it's just going to be a series of clips that continues on. So extra set of hands is helpful. This is a big fascia. It can be rather cumbersome, and I do recommend having a nice organized spot to keep this. You know, it's not going to be off for that long, but you want to make sure that your fascia is not getting damaged while getting your hitch installed. And when you get to the taillight pocket, you'll probably notice those clips. You can either press down or pry up on them, and that's going to help loosen this. And wedging a plastic tool can definitely help get this popped over. Just hold pressure and then work each one.
There we go.
And then from here, there's going to be center clips. You're just going to pull straight back. And we don't have any electrical connections on our fascia, so we can set this aside.
Got it?
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Our sensor bar above our bumper beam, we're going to temporarily just loosen up and remove and set that aside because we need to get the bumper beam off for the hitch to go in place. And to get the sensor bar off, super easy. It's just 4 10mm screws. They're going to be located along the entire length of it. We'll get these taken out. This has a plastic clip that's located right here. We should be able to just pop this out just like that. And then there's going to be one on the other side. And we don't have to unplug anything. If you want, you can just have the sensor bar set aside for now. We'll reinstall it shortly after we get our hitch up. We're going to be removing our entire bumper beam assembly. So that's not just this aluminum portion here. It's going to be the flanges that go up to the frame of the vehicle. And there's 3 flange nuts. They're going to require a 15mm socket to get these all taken off. So we'll get these removed on both sides. Once those are removed, we can grab our assembly and set it aside. Our hitch is going to bolt directly up to those same studs, and we're going to be reusing the same nuts that we just removed. Your bumper beam is not going to go back. You can do whatever you want with it, but the hitch is going to replace it, so you no longer need that bumper beam. So to get this in place, we'll just line it up. And you'll notice that these are slotted, so there's a little bit of side-to-side movement. For the most part, it's going to be pretty well centered, but now's a good chance to make sure that you have it exactly where you want it. And then we'll grab our nuts, get these hand tightened on, and you can snug them down. I wouldn't recommend using the impact because we'll be using a torque wrench to be able to get these perfectly tightened down, especially when you have studs like this. If you over tighten it, you run the risk of pulling those out and causing more damage long term. So you can snug them down with the 15, maybe just use a ratchet, and then we'll come back with that torque wrench. Once those are snugged down, refer to your instruction manual for the torque settings, and we're going to just use that same socket and a torque wrench to torque these down. I mentioned earlier you can over tighten and cause damage. A torque wrench is going to make sure that it's going to be tight enough so you can pull things, put your accessories on and not cause issue, but it's not going to be too tight, putting stress on that hardware. So go through, get all your hardware torqued down properly. With our hardware torqued down, you've officially installed the hitch. We can put our sensor bar back up and then start putting everything back in the reverse order. But as I put the sensor bar up, you may notice the plug that's located right here that goes into a dummy cap. If you plan on putting wiring to tow a trailer this is a great time to do it because you do have to pull the fascia off to gain access to it. So if you're doing your hitch, you might want to pick up wiring out the gate, and that way you can get this knocked out. But something I've realized is there are variations between years of Teslas, and even though sometimes the wiring says it'll fit, that's not the case, and the reason being is the plug changes designs. I haven't quite found the rhyme or reason why some have them proper and some don't. So looking at our plug today, you can see kind of the shape of everything, and the plug-in option from CURT has this center divider. So if your plug has that opening, you could pick up this plug-and-play option. It would just snap into place, and you have 4-pole wiring ready to go, which makes it super easy. Unfortunately, ours doesn't have that plug, so we're going to have to use a slightly different alternative of ZCI wiring on this, which does make a little bit more cutting and splicing and a much more lengthy install. So if you're planning on doing wiring, check this plug while you have your fascia off and see if you have this. It's going to save you a lot of time. Now at this point, you're just going to put everything back in the reverse order that you took it off, so pretty straightforward there. You may notice that the access panel on your rear fascia, there's a notch that you can pop that out. Sometimes it's easier to pop that out ahead of time, and that way you can see exactly where the clips are and how to pop that off for the next time. But that's the great part about this one. You get a nice clean look overall, but still all that usability. And that was a look at installation of the CURT Trailer Hitch receiver on a 2023 Tesla Model Y.